Welcome you all in the third lecture of embedded systems. So in the last lecture we have talked about some of the design constraints of the embedded system, and some of the important design constraints we have seen in detail. For example, time to market, time to prototype, NRE cost, and per unit cost of a embedded system or any product which we want to design. Also, in the last lecture we have talked about in detail architecture of the embedded system, right? Also, we have seen that how the hardware is evolving, and we can select different types of processors based on the application specific requirements. So in the today's class we are going to see the processors. Okay, so there are different kinds of processors which are used to in different applications. So today we will study processors. So there are different kinds of processors which are used in different applications. So these processors can be categorized broadly into three categories. One is general purpose processor. One is general purpose processor, another is application specific information processor, and last is nothing but application specific IC, integrated circuit. So in short form we call it as ASIP, ASIP, and we call it as ASIC. So what is the difference between general purpose processor, application specific information processor, and application specific integrated circuit? So general purpose compute processor basically has high end of flexibility. Okay, so we have too much flexibility to implement many functions in the general purpose processor. On the other extreme, if you go for application specific IC, we have very set of limited functions which can be implemented on a application specific IC, and this is only designed for a particular application. So let's take one example. So for example, we have to implement a task, a square task. So let's say we have to implement a square task. So this square is nothing but the analogous way. So there is a function, so you can consider that we have to implement a function which is a kind of a square, right? So this is an analogous form. Okay, so what is general purpose processor? So general purpose processor will be something like this, which can not only implement a square function, but also it can implement a circle, or it can implement a triangle, and so on. So general purpose processor can implement a lot of functions. Okay, so it has a lot of instruction set which can implement a lot of tasks, right? Now what is application specific processor, information processor? So the ASIPs are in between general purpose processor and ASICs. So what is an application specific processor? So before that we will see what is application specific IC. So application specific is IC is nothing but, suppose we want to implement this square function, so we can only implement this square function. Okay, nothing else. So ASICs are designed only to implement this function only. However, the ASICs have flexibility to implement only square function, but it has flexibility to implement a lot of square function. So let's say this is your square function, okay, which you want to implement, but it can also implement a bigger square function. Okay, this also it has flexibility to implement. It has flexibility to implement much more bigger square function, but it is also designed for application specific purpose only, but it has little bit of flexibility to implement different kinds of square functions, but it cannot implement other kinds of functions, right? So you got the difference between a general purpose processor, ASICs, and ASICs, right? So we can say that if you talk about flexibility, so flexibility is increasing in this direction, right? This direction. So this is the major advantage of general purpose processor if you want more flexibility. And in this side, if you go, so why do we want to go for general purpose processor to ASICs, right? So general purpose processor has a high-end instruction set architecture, right? So it has a high-end instruction set architecture, so it has a lot of instructions. It has a lot of instructions which are used to implement a lot of functions, right? But if you talk about application specific IC, it has very limited set of instructions, and those instructions are only supporting to that particular applications, right? So if you are going from this to this direction, your power requirements will be much lower, right? Your application specific processor or ASICs, the cost will be very less, right? Because we don't want to implement a lot of functions, right? So our processor cost will also go down. We can optimize the power also in the ASICs, while if you go in this direction, their power and cost requirement will increase, right? So this is the difference, major difference between general purpose processor, application specific processor, and ASICs. So let's see the architecture. If you talk about the architecture of a general purpose processor and ASICs, if you see the architecture looks same. So if I draw the rough architecture of the general purpose computer and application specific processor, so it has some memory, right? So if you talk about architecture, it has some memory, and memory can be divided into two category, that is, one is program memory and another is data memory. Okay, so it can be separate or it can be combined, so that depends on different memory architectures. That also we will see that there are two memory architecture. One is Harvard memory architecture and another is Von Neumann memory architectures. So other than memory, it has a control path and a data path, right? So let me draw the control path. So this is your control path and it has a one data path, right? So in control path, we have whatever control logic we are implementing here, so that will be implemented in a control path. So this is your control logic, and it has one instruction register, another it has program counter, right? So this is your control path and it is your data path. So what will be there in data path? So data path means, so whatever the data is coming, we have to perform some operations, right? It might be arithmetic operations or it might be a logical operations. So all these operations are implemented in a arithmetic and logic unit, and it has some set of registers, right? It has some set of registers. Clear? So now there will be communication between a control path and the data path, right? So how, so suppose let's say this is the architecture of your general purpose processor. So suppose general purpose processor, we want to implement any instruction. So what will happen? So program counter will be pointing to the address of next instruction which is to be executed. So once the instruction is fetched, it is coming to the instruction register for decoding. Once the instruction is decoded, it will go to control logic, and similarly for implementation in ALU or using some set of registers, right? So these control path and data path can access the data and program memory through some input output, right? So this is the general architecture of general purpose processor. So if I draw the architecture of ASICs, if I draw the architecture of ASICs, it is also same. So again it has one control path and one is, so it has one control path same as control path, and one other is data path, and it is also having some ALU, it is also having some set of register, it has control logic, it has one IR, and it is one having program counter, and it is having a memory, right? It has memory. So what is the major difference in the architecture of general purpose processors and ASICs? So you can, if you see the architecture, you may say that there is no difference, right? But the difference is not in the architecture, the difference is in the instruction set architecture. Okay, the difference is in instruction set architecture. So what is instruction set architecture? So instruction set architecture is nothing but the number of instructions which can be supported or implemented in that processor. So if you talk about general purpose processor, it supports a lot of instructions, or we can say that its ISA is complex. However, in the case of ASICs, there are the ASICs, the ISA, the instruction set architecture is simple, right? So instruction set architecture is simple in the case of general purpose, the ASICs, right? Now actually, if you see what is there in control logic and data path, so what is happening actually. So control path is nothing but control path is having IR, PC and control logic, right? So control logic is implemented in a cycle of fetch. So first program counter will fetch the instruction from the program memory, and then the instruction is executed, decoded in the instruction register, and then finally it is executed, right? So this is nothing but a cycle of control flow, right? So first the instruction will be fetched from the program counter, and it is decoded in the IR, and then it is executed. Again the program counter will be incremented, and it will fetch the next instruction to be executed. So this cycle will continue in the case of control flow, But what is there in data path or a data flow, right? What is there in data path? So data path is nothing but having some set of registers. It has some wires, right? It has some multiplexer or data elements. It has some data elements such as multiplier and adders, right? So data elements are nothing but we have some multipliers or adders. Okay, so these things are there in the data path. So if you see in a general purpose processor, the data path and control path are complex. Okay, but in case of ASICs, although it is for a application specific purpose, but there is some flexibility to implement that different kinds of task in that particular application, right? Is it clear to you? So if you see where the control path is there, okay, so the control path in GPP or in ASIC, basically it is simple, right? It's simple as compared to the general purpose processor, and it is basically it can be either hardwired or micro programmed. Okay, it can be either hardwired or micro program, right? So if you talk about our last thing, that is your application specific IC. So in this case, the data path and control paths are very, very simple, right? Very, very simple. So what do you mean by very, very simple data and control path? Okay, so if you see the number of wires or connections, the number of connections are very limited. Okay, we have very limited wires or connections in the data path and control path, right? Also a limited instructions are, or let me write, can be executed. Limited instructions only can be executed. Now we have studied three kinds of processors, right? We have a choice of general purpose processor, we have a choice of ASICs, we have a choice of application specific IC. Now how do I choose a processor, right? So let's suppose I am an embedded designer. How will I decide what kind of processor I have to choose, right? So what I have to see? I have to see the application, right? Suppose I want to design any embedded system, I will see what are the requirements in that systems. Is it clear? What are the requirements in the system? Okay. Also I will see that what is the specification, of the embedded system which I have to design, right? Or let's say that I am a client, okay, and I am going to a company and I'm asking that I want you to manufacture or design a particular embedded system. The first question that embedded system engineer will ask from that company, that what is your requirements and what is your specification, right? So what is this requirements and specification? So the client will give some kind of specification and requirements. Those requirements and specification can be vague, right? So we have to optimize the requirements and specifications, right? So as I already told, that it is a job of an embedded system engineer that it has to decide, or he has to decide, that how many functions I want to implement in hardware and how many functions I want to implement in software, and that is called as hardware software partitioning, right? So now once I have decided how many functions I can implement on a hardware or software, so that what I have to do, I have to map those requirements and specification on hardware or software. So I have to do nothing but mapping, right? So those requirements and specifications I have to map to hardware or software. Now how will I do that? Okay, how will I decide that on what many number of functions I have to implement on hardware and software? So what I have to see? I have to see again the design constraints, right? So I have to see that I can satisfy the maximum number of design constraints. So right, so what I have to do, I will make an optimization problem, right? I will make this as optimization problem. Once that I have made that some kind of objective functions which I have to minimize all the design constraints subject to some constraint, right? So I have made an objective function with some number of constraints. Then I have to validate it, right? So whatever the number of tasks I have decided or I have mapped to hardware and software part, I have to validate it, right? Validate in terms of what? Validate in terms of cost and energy, right? So if I vary, so if I move from here to here, can I reduce the cost and energy of the system, right? So I have to optimize all the parameter in terms of cost and energy, right? So once it is validated, I will synthesize and again validate the emulated sketch, right? And then once it is the synthesized system is completely validated, then I will go for implementation, hardware implementation and manufacturing, right? Now we have seen that the client has to give a requirement and a specification, right? So what is actually a requirement? A requirement means, what is the general terms, what is the meaning of requirements? So requirement means it describes what the system or product is to do, right? What it will do. If you design this, if you want to design a system, I have to describe that what it will do, right? So who will do that in a company? So if you talk about company, who will do that? So either my marketing department will do that, or a major customers or major client will give you the requirements, right? In a big companies, or if you talk about smaller companies, the hardware and software engineers, right? The hardware and software engineers sketch out the requirements, right? Sketch out the requirement, right? Now we have seen what is actually the requirements, right? And then what is the specification? Okay, specification means the objective of, or basically let's see what is specification. If I write it down, what is specification? So specification is nothing but it is describing or description, let's say description of how the design will be implemented, will be implemented. So requirement means I have this kind of requirement that how the system will work. Okay, and specification means how the system will be designed or implemented, right? Or we can say that how the requirements will be met, right? Now what is actually the requirements? Okay, what is actually the requirements? So there are two kinds of requirement. One is a product requirement, one is the product requirement, and another is functional requirement. Okay, we also call it as non-functional requirement. Now what is actually the product requirement? So it describes the product, right? What it will do, describe the product, right? What it will do. Now what is actually the function requirement? Functional requirement is nothing but it is objectives of the product. Objectives of the product. So objectives of the product means how it is implemented and what it is going to do. What are the objectives of the product, right? You are designing a product, it has some objectives, right? And how it will be implemented? It will be implemented to satisfy those objectives, right? Or we can say that it describes the system's behavior. Okay, it describes the system's behavior. What is the meaning of behavior? What is the output? Output should look like, right? So what will be the output? Based on some input. So if I give some input, what should be the output I should get, right? What should be the output, right? So that describes the system's behavior. That is nothing but your functional requirement. Now what could be the specification? Okay. So specification, what could be the possible specifications? Suppose I am a client, so what could be the possible specification I have to give to the company? So one could be the engineering specification. So what do you mean engineering specification? So engineering specification means it has some hardware specification, also it has some software or firmware specification. So what is actually the hardware specification? So hardware specification means what should be the specific hardware? What should be the specific hardware which will be designed. So I want that that kind of sensor should be there, that kind of actuator should be there, that kind of processor should be there, this much bit microprocessor or microcontroller, or it's a general purpose processor or application specific IC I want, right? So this is nothing but the hardware specification. Hardware specification means how much flexibility I want, right? So accordingly a designer will choose the processor, but I have to give some specification, right? What is software specification? So software specification means, so for a specific processor, how the firmware will be designed. So for a specific processor, how the firmware will be designed. So as I told that there are different types of processors. Okay, so the firmware also will be different, right? So once I have describing that particular processors, I have to describe the firmware also, right? Or the embedded system engineer will choose that firmware. So these are the engineering specification. Okay, so the last specification could be the test specification. So test specification means once the system is ready, I have to test with some certain parameters. So I have to give some. So in the test specifications, there are some other kind of specification, general specification as well, such as what should be the power consumption, right? What should be the cost of a one IC, that could be, right? So these are some of the general specification. You can write it down. That is general specification. Okay. So what could be the cost of one unit? What should be around, right? What is the expected sales, right? After the entry, right? After the entry into market, right? And the number of units you want to design or aiming. Then the time period for which you want to keep it into a market. Okay, and there are some other general specifications, such as structural. Basically, we can see that these are important points. There are some important points while deciding any specifications, right, or requirements. So one of the point is what should be the speed of data processing. Okay, so let's suppose that a client has given some requirement and specification, right? So client has given you requirement and specifications. You have to work out on some points which are important. One is speed of data processing, and now what should be the possible choice of microprocessor or microcontroller or PLDs. Okay, or we can use simple digital circuits, right? Digital circuits. How many input output pins we are requiring for interface, right? How many interfaces basically you want. Okay, what could be the complexity? Complexity basically means the number of computations. That is nothing but number of computation, like it should be n square or n log n. Okay, what should be the possible complexity? Now what could be the design challenges? Okay, when we're designing it, so what could be the design challenges, requirement challenges? Okay, requirement challenges. So what is the meaning of design challenges or requirement challenges? So client has given you some requirements and specifications, right? So client is giving you some vague specification, right? I want a system which should do something like this, but we don't know that how to implement it, right? Is it realizable to fulfill those requirements, right? So what we have to do first. So the client has given you some specifications. So what are the challenges actually in the specifications? So what you have to do as an embedded system engineer, you have to first simulate that specification. So right, so you can simulate itself, that specification itself, right? So you have to check that whatever the specifications the client has given, that is realizable or not, or how many specifications are realizable. Okay, so then you can fine tune the specification, right? Now once it is simulated and validated, now we have to go for architecture or structure. Okay, architecture of the system which we want to design. So architecture also itself you can simulate, right? So you can keep some number of gates, number of circuits, right, number of processor you can arrange in such a way. So in what form your architecture is simulating, right? So client has given you some requirement means what the system has to do. So you have designed some architecture. Is that architecture performing the same way which is desired, right? So you can simulate that before going to the manufacturing. Now apart from the architecture, you can see the communication also. So communication means the device wants to use the serial communication or parallel communication, or what kind of communication the device want to use, and that also can be simulated along with the simulated along with the architecture of the embedded system. So now once all these specification, architecture and communications are simulated and perfectly working fine, then what you have to do? You have to go for optimization, right? Optimization. So what is the meaning of optimization and what do you want to optimize, right? So many things to optimize. One is how many functions you want to implement in hardware and software. Second thing is the placements. So you are having some hardwares, the number of sensors, number of circuits, digital circuits, gates and all. So we have to place, okay, so we have to optimize the placement in such a way we can optimize the power, right? So this is one of the requirement. Okay, so and what could be the possible optimized architecture which will reduce the power consumption and improve the performance of that embedded system. So these are all optimized constraints, right, which we have to optimize. So finally, once optimization is done, what we have to do? We have to go for synthesis or synthesize that architecture. After synthesizing, you have to validate it before going to manufacturing and implementation, and then finally it will come. Okay, so how will you validate it here actually before going for implementation and manufacturing? So you have some emulators, which will mimic that exact exact that embedded system, right? So in the emulator you can validate it, whatever the design we have synthesized the design, and that is perfectly working fine. Then finally we will go for hardware implementation, the actual implementation, and then finally the production or manufacturing. Is it clear? Now here we are talking about requirements in specification. That is nothing but how the system is going to behave, or we can talk about, this is nothing but the behavior of the system, right? So we are talking, one is the behavior of the system and another is architecture means communication will also come in the architecture, right? So what could be the structure of that embedded system, right? So these two are very important factor in designing the embedded system. So we talk about the behavior of the system and another is structure of the system. Now we will see what is the meaning of behavior and structure we have seen, but we can again see what is the meaning of behavior and structure. So for example, you have to implement a function. So let's say the function is taking input A, B and C. So it has 3 inputs and it is giving some output, right? So you suppose that this is the function, right? So I have some set of inputs and we know that how the system is going to behave. So what's your structure? So this is nothing but your behavior of the system. Okay, Now what should be the structure of the embedded system? So structure means, so let's say if this function can be implemented using one AND gate, one OR gate, and another is one XOR gate, let's say. So this is connected to here, this is connected to here, and this can be connected to here, this can be connected here, like this. So we have three inputs, A, B and C, and we are getting a function output, that is Y. So this is nothing but your structure of the function, right? Structure of function F. So this is the structure of a function F. So in embedded system we talk about behavior and structure of the system. Now the third thing is optimization, right? So optimization means, so suppose at which place I have to implement this gate or that gate or digital circuit, right? So what could be the possible placement of these digital circuits or number of gates, right? And this is called as placement and routing task, which is very important in VLSI design. So so why do we want to do this task actually? Why can't we have designed some a structure? Why can't we go for simply implementation? Because we want to optimize the area, right? Because we want the form factor should be minimized, right? So we want to optimize the area in which the system is designed, right? So we have to do optimization in the area also, right? So this is optimization of area, right? This is the optimization of area. Okay. So now, so we have some requirements and we have seen some specification. Now what could be the next possible thing, right? So I have the structure of the system, I have the behavior of the system. Now what could be the next thing? Next thing will be the number of the choice of next possible thing is choice of processors, right? So now it comes choice of processor. What processor I have to use, right? I can use general purpose processor, I can use ASICs or ASICs, right? And even though based on some applications you can decide I have to use microprocessor or microcontroller or microcomputer. So what could be the possible processor choice? We will see in next lecture. In the next lecture, the architectural detail of microprocessor, microcontroller. And in this, see that how will I decide that what kind of microprocessor I have to use. So these things can be decided by taking into these considerations. So you can see these are the major consideration which you have to see while choosing a microprocessor or a microcontroller. So one is the number of input pins, right? So the number of output pins I need, right? Second thing is interfaces, right? Number of interfaces. Third thing is memory requirement, right? This is very important actually, because if you are unnecessarily using a higher memory, you are increasing the cost of that embedded system. Then fourth thing is the number of interrupts, right? How many external interrupts you want to support, that is also a very important thing. Then real-time consideration means the real-time inputs. Okay, the real-time, sometimes unexpected parameters are measured by some sensor, so we should have some real-time considerations. Okay, or this microprocessor or microcontroller should not fail in these computations, right? So we have some real-time consideration as well. Then developing environment or the development environment. So suppose a company has some certain kind of development environment, so he will basically choose that supports that particular development environment, right? So he will choose the processor based on the development environment also. Another is processing speed, right? Suppose an application demands a very demands very fast processing, right? So we have to choose a high end microprocessor or controller, right? But if you a certain application demand a very low end processing, so we don't need to use a high end microprocessor or microcontroller. We can use a simple PIC controller as well, right? So the next is ROM and RAM requirement, that is not different from memory, so we can write separately also in terms of microprocessor and microcontroller. And architecture, right? Architecture is also important. Memory architecture, suppose we want to use Van Neumann architecture, Harvard architecture, in which data memory and program memory are separate or combined, right? So this is also one of the important factor in considering the selection of a processor. Now next thing is power requirements. Okay, what is your power requirements? Like I want to allow the maximum power to be dissipated by this much only, right? This much milliwatts. So that has a power requirement. So we have to choose some microprocessor or microcontroller which dissipates low power. Then another is environmental requirements. Environmental requirements. Suppose I am placing a embedded system in a large system where it is to be placed in a high temperature or low temperature scenario, then I have to choose a microprocessor according to that, right? So last is actually the life cycle cost. So cost is also one of the important parameter for selection of this microprocessor or microcontroller, right? So if you see this number of input output pins is nothing but how many extra input output pins you want to support. So we have different kind of processors. If you have different kinds of processor which has number of different input output pins. For example, let's suppose if I talk in detail, so let me write in brief. So pins, if I talk about number of pins, so if I talk, there is Intel processor. So we have Intel processor as 8031 or 8051, which has 32 input output pins. I will give you some of the other examples also. So if you are taking microchip processor and the name is PIC microcontroller, PIC 7Z42, and it has 33 number of input output pins. If you want to choose Motorola processor, then it has the number is 68HZ05, the name of the processor, and the number of input output pins varies in this microprocessor or a microcontroller. So these are the basically processors, particular processor, and these are the company which are manufacturing them, right? Now if you want to choose some other processors, I will give some other some couple of more processors. So company is Zilog and the processor name is ZB6E40, and it has number of 32 pins. And we have Philips, there is a processor by Philips also, and the number of the processor is 83Z, or the name of the processor is 83Z751. The number of input output pin it supports are 19. And Atmel, the name of the processor is AT90S8515. So Atmel is Atmel is a company which produces different processors. This is one kind of processor. So if you go for Arduino, right? Arduino also uses Atmel company processors, and it supports 32 number of input output pins. Now what are the interfaces? So next was interfaces, right? So what is the interface means? Interface means how many USB port I want, okay, how many serial port I want, okay, I want a PWM output or A2D separately or D2A separately, right? Or I want a HDMI interface or not, I want a auxiliary auxiliary interface or not. So these are kind of interfaces which I can look upon while selecting a processor. Now if you talk about the memory requirements, right? So memory requirements, so what are the things we have to consider which while considering the memory requirements? So one is actually we have to estimate exactly or accurately how much minimum memory we require. So estimate accurately the memory, and it is very critical actually, because it is directly relating to the cost of the processor, right? So you have to estimate the memory. Now so this is very critical actually. You cannot overestimate it or you cannot underestimate it, right? If you overestimate it, your cost will go high, but if you underestimate it, it hurdles your futuristic development, right? So if you underestimate the memory, you cannot make any changes in the futuristic development. Suppose you want to add some update, but you cannot do that because of the restriction of the memory, right? So it has two kind of memory, RAM and ROM, and we will read in detail in the further lectures about RAM and ROM, what are the possible different types of RAM and ROM. Okay, now what was the other things? So we have seen the memory requirements. Interrupts, anyhow, how many number of external interrupts I want to support. Real time, we have studied development environment, basically the what is IDE, processing speed. Okay, that's fine. So that's all for today. In the next class we will see the architectural requirements, okay, architectural details of, in the next class. So in the next lecture, so lecture number 4, we are going to study architectural details of microprocessor, microcontroller and let me write it down here, microcontroller.